Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We seek to transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this podcast with a donation or a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. If you're viewing any of the podcasts on YouTube, please subscribe. So, supporters of this podcast, we say thank you. Check out my encouraging, inspiring, and transforming books that can be found on Amazon. I'm available for speaking engagements, in person, and virtual seminars, so please contact me by Facebook, X, and or LinkedIn. I have with me Rhonda Britten, who is an Emmy Award winner, repeat Oprah guest, and master coach who has changed lives in over 600 episodes of reality television. She's been read, heard, and watched by millions, coached tens of thousands of clients, trained hundreds of coaches, and now wants to share all she knows with you. I am excited to have Brittany come and share with us today on this podcast. Brittany, it's good to have you come and share with us. And I know listeners are going to be very, very enthused, excited to just hear what you have to say. So, would you just tell us a little about yourself and where you are located?
Ooh, a little bit about myself. Like, what should I say? Ooh, there's so much to say, right? There's nothing like better than to helping people master fear because
Okay.
for me, mastering fear is the key to everything. You can
Mhm.
you can know a lot of things about a lot of things, but unless you understand how fear works and master yours, you're not going to get as far as you'd like.
Okay.
And where I'm physically right now, as I'm in Los Angeles, and we are having some rain, which is so exciting because anytime we get rain here in LA, I'm thrilled.
I know you are.
I'm
I
thrilled.
I can definitely understand that. Listen, Brittany, it's good to have you with us today. I am excited. I'm here in North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, and
I love North Carolina.
I do lots of podcasts. Do it with you, probably be close to 250.
Holy
And
beaners.
as a matter of fact, I'm interviewing authors for a publishing company out of LA, Atticus Publishing Company.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I enjoy doing, and I enjoy having good guests, great guests. And you seem to be one of those who's going to be dealing with fear today. And
That's right.
I love that. So let's get right into it. I'm excited that we can talk, because uh, dealing with fear is something that most folk uh, deal with. They might tell you they're not, but I'm just as afraid of snakes as I can be. Be honest with you, okay? So we'll start off.
That's a physical fear, right? And
Yeah.
physical fears, most of us don't face on a daily basis. Right?
Okay.
We don't face our snake fear or our height fear most likely on a daily basis.
Mm,
But we do have to live with our emotional fears.
okay.
That's what I'm an expert at. And the challenge is our body and brain don't know the difference between emotional fear and physical fear.
Okay.
So, if you're scared of snakes versus nervous about getting rejected, your body responds the same. So you might get that anxiety, you might get that backache, you might get those racing thoughts, you might beat yourself up and put yourself down. So, emotional fears are really truly the thing that stops us from living the life our soul intended. And that's what I'm here to do is help people live the life their soul intended. And the only way to do that is to build a relationship with fear that's different than the one that they may be living with now.
Okay. I get that. So let me just get to it because I've read your profile. I have to say is awesome. And of course, you're the type of guest that I always love having on my podcast because of what my podcast is all about,
Mhm.
encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. So I'm going to ask you this question. you say that complainers are fear driven. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they are also everywhere. So when we hear them in a restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
we can get away from them by switching tables. So what do we do when we can't get away from them? Like at work or
Yeah.
a family reunion.
Yeah, that's
Tell us,
right.
tell us how we handle that.
Well, that's such a great question because complainers are everywhere. And the first thing to do is remember that they're complaining out of fear. So, if you understand that, if you really get a deep understanding that people don't complain unless they have a fear, then when they're complaining, you automatically can raise your compassion level and your understanding of where they're coming from. And you can actually see their innocence more easily when you recognize that they're not doing it for any other reason, that that's the way that they get their needs met, that they're feeling safe. So as long as they're complaining. So this is how you handle them. Okay. Now, some of these people that are complaining on a regular basis, when you say this to them the first time, they're going to look at you, they're going to roll their eyes, and they're going to say something like, "Don't give me that coaching stuff," or, whatever they say, right? But
Okay.
you've got to persevere. So this is the thing that I train my students to do. I go, so like listening to an aunt or listening to somebody at work, they're complaining again, and you go, you know what? I'm just a little confused right now because I'm not sure how you want me to listen to you. Do you want
Hmm.
me to listen to help you solve a problem, or do you want me to listen to join with you and just vent and, join your upset,
Hmm.
They're going to look at you, roll their eyes, like, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Well, I don't know how you want me to listen. What is my role here?"
Hmm.
So when you do that, you automatically put them in charge of being responsible and awake to what they're doing.
Okay.
Now again, the first few times that you do it, they're probably going to be like, "Well, I just want you to agree with me. I just want you to, okay, great,
Hmm.
awesome." And then you go and you choose to do it or not. You can be like, "Okay, got it. So I'm just here to go, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh." They're like, "Yeah, just, yeah. Aren't you mad too?" I go, "Well, yeah, but I'm not that I don't see it the same way you do." "What do you mean you don't see it the same way?" So now you're having a conversation. So you want to move out of the complaining. So just actually asking somebody what your role is shifts the conversation because people that complain don't really even know they're doing it. That's how they're getting their needs met. That's how they're getting attention. That's how they're getting connection. And most people who are good complainers, really excellent complainers, A+ complainers, that's literally how they create community.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so a lot of people build their relationships through their complaints, through their fears.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, suppose somebody's just say, I'm not afraid. I don't care. I'm walking around. Nothing bothers me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't care what you say.
Yes.
What what
Well,
what what would you say to them?
Well, I've actually had that happen many a time. And
Hmm.
usually that's the first hurdle I have to get over when I'm giving a
Okay.
keynote or a talk, because most people don't think they are afraid. Most people
Okay.
don't think they do have fears. So most people are walking around exactly like you just said. They're walking around like, "I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. I'm not scared."
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, during my worst days of me crawling through glass, I didn't think I was afraid or scared either. So
Okay.
this is what I do, James. I pull out my list of what I call fear responses. Okay. So
Hmm.
let me just ask your audience if they're in a safe place to shut their eyes. And if they're not, please don't. And I
Hmm.
want you to nod your head if you do any of these things or feel any of these things. I'm going to read a list. And if you do any of these things or feel any of these things, everyone listening, go ahead and nod your head. So, do you ever deny yourself? Do you ever isolate? Do you ever pretend everything's okay when it's not? Do you ever hide? What about whine? Do you ever settle? Do you ever compare? How about manipulate, even secretly? Get
Hmm.
defensive? Judge? Do you ever complain? What we just talked about. Do you ever
Hmm.
procrastinate? What about wait and call it patience? Do you ever blame, struggle, worry? Do you ever deflect? Do you ever try to take control? Do you ever feel bitter, powerless, resentful, entitled? Ever feel guilty, disappointed, become a perfectionist or a people pleaser? Do you ever feel indifferent, irresponsible, irritated like you right now might now while I'm reading this
Hmm.
list? Do you ever
Hmm.
feel ignored, get caught in self-pity, annoyed, or victimized?
Okay. I hear
So,
you.
so when I read this list, whether it's to 100 people or 1,000 people, 95% of the people have 95% of their head nodded.
Okay.
So most people do these things, one of these things or more of these things on a regular basis.
I got
Well,
you.
this is what people think their problem is, right? So I'm a complainer, I got to quit complaining. Oh, I'm judging, I got to quit judging, right? So they
Hmm.
think that's their problem and they label it as their problem and they may also identify it as a character flaw. In the world of fearless living in Rhonda Britten, what those words are actually what I call fear responses.
Mm.
So you worry because you have a fear. You feel
Okay.
guilty because you have a fear. You control because you have a fear.
Mm.
So most people are just changing the chairs on the Titanic by trying to fix the fear responses rather than actually addressing the fear itself. So that's what I do. I help people identify what I call the wheel of fear, their unique fear, their
Hmm.
core fear, so that they can automatically stop doing these things. Literally, when people get their wheel of fear, they stop doing 30% of these things automatically. They never do it again. And then
Wow.
another 30% might take, a few days, a week for
Hmm.
awareness to kick in. And then others will be a little tougher because they're more ingrained. But
Okay.
once you understand it's fear and it's not you, it's not your bad behavior. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're selfish. It's not because you're stupid, right? It's not because you're lazy or worthy issues or you're not good enough.
Okay.
It literally is just symptoms of fear.
All right. I got you, and I hear that. I told you when we first got started that I was afraid of snakes. As far as I'm concerned, there are two types that I'm afraid of, and that's a live one and a dead one. Okay, so so my question to you, are some fears healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. So fear
Okay,
in and of itself is healthy,
okay.
right? The challenge is that because we have such a quick trigger on fear, we're
Hmm.
responding, or I should say reacting on a moment by moment basis, instead of being able to work with our fears so that when the alert comes in for, i.e., a physical fear,
Hmm.
that we can even hear it. So the body doesn't know the difference between a physical fear and an emotional fear. Now, physical fears are instinctual, right? We got to stay alive. That snake,
Hmm.
right? You
Hmm.
might
Hmm.
see that snake. You
Yeah.
want to stay alive, avoid the snake, right?
Okay.
Well, the challenge is on a daily basis, James, is that most people are facing their emotional fears moment by moment, day by day, and don't know it.
Mm.
So they are in survival mode by reacting and being and living inside their fear responses instead of deciding, well, wait a minute, I want to bring down my fear. I want to quit complaining. I want to quit judging. I want to quit, getting
Hmm.
irritated and annoyed. I
Hmm.
want to quit procrastinating. And
Hmm.
so the solution is actually moving into the wheel of fear. So bottom line is we all have fears. There's no getting rid of it. So it's part of our neurobiology. It's part of our brain and our body.
Mm. Okay.
What we
Okay.
want to do is actually retrain it, create new neural pathways so that it becomes a friend rather than a foe.
Okay. Now, I'm hearing you, and I love what I'm hearing. It's very, very, very intriguing. And I'm wondering now, um, i- if you could just talk a little bit about yourself, because this is interesting to me. Uh, somebody who just decide, look, I'm gonna deal with this particular topic that is fear. So I want to know. Uh, what are the reasons behind your love of fear? Uh, how did you start on this path? Because it seems like you don't have a problem with it. So talk about it a
Thank
little
you.
bit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, it's so awesome that you think that and say that. But I believe that the worst days of our lives have our seeds of destiny. So
Okay.
the worst days of our lives have our seed for our destiny. And my worst day was when I was 14 years old. I grew up in a little tiny town in Upper Michigan, 365 inches of snow a year, and two restaurants, fancy Douglas House Buffet Hotel and Big Boy. No McDonald's. That was an hour and a half away. We didn't have anything fancy like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents had recently separated, and it was Father's Day. So my father was coming to take us out to Sunday brunch. So my mom's in her bedroom, fluffing up her beehive hairdo, putting on her blue eyeshadow, rose-colored lipstick. My two sisters are fighting it out in our one bathroom. And my dad walks in, come on, girls, let's go, because that's what dads do. And
Mm-hmm.
me and my mom start walking towards the back door. My sister's still fighting it out in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And as we start moving out the door, my father sees that it's starting to rain. So he says, I got to get the coat from the car. Now, his coat is a tan Naugahyde suit. And I bet you remember, James, that tan Naugahyde leisure suit coat. I bet you remember that. And that was a good looking coat, good looking coat. So my dad goes to his trunk, opens his trunk. And instead of grabbing a coat out of the corner of my eye, I notice he grabs a gun and he starts yelling at my mother, you made me do this. You made me do this. And he fires. Now
Mm.
I start yelling, Dad, what are you doing? Dad, what are you doing? Stop. Dad, what are you doing? And he cocks the gun again and looks at me. And I think I'm next. And he blinks and I blink and he blinks and I blink. And my mother, literally with her last breath, screams out, no, don't. And my father, realizing my mother is still alive, turns that gun that was on me towards her and shoots her a second time.
Mm.
And that bullet goes through her abdomen, out her back, and lands in the car horn. And all I hear for the next 20 minutes is, "Aang." And then my father cocks the gun one more time, puts it to his head, and fires. So I'm the solo witness in a matter of 2 minutes to my father murdering my mother and committing suicide in front of me.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
I don't know how anybody else would respond, James, but this is how I responded. It's my fault because I didn't grab the gun. I didn't jump in front of my mother. I didn't kick my father's shins, right? I did nothing except go, stop, Dad, stop, right?
Mm.
So from that moment on that day, I believe I split in two, the outside Rhonda and the inside Rhonda. The outside Rhonda, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm
Mm.
Rhonda. Outside Rhonda's not afraid. If you would have asked me 2 weeks after my parents died if I was afraid, I would have looked at you and said no. I had no relationship to fear or being afraid or scared. It never came out of my mouth, right? Even when I became an alcoholic, when I got 3 DUIs and had 3 suicide attempts, right? Even during those times, I never thought I was afraid or scared. So here I am, my third suicide attempt. I realize that I'm not very good at killing myself, James, not very
Mm-hmm.
good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And they put you, by the way, when you try to kill yourself 3 times, they put you in a psychiatric for evaluation. So I got evaluated, deemed not crazy, sent back to my house. And I realized that I'm not dying. I'm not dying. Now, all these years that I'm drinking, DUIing, and suiciding, I was also going to therapy. I was going to workshops. I was reading books. I was doing everything that you were supposed to do to help yourself. So I had a lot of knowledge, James, and I had a lot of skill, but I did not have awareness. I did not, I kept on having, I should say this way, I kept on having the feeling that there was something wrong with me.
Okay.
No matter the knowledge, no matter the tools that I had, I still kept thinking something was wrong with me. So I go back to my apartment after that third suicide attempt and realize I'm not dying. I'm not dying, which is what I wanted to do. So I've got to figure this out. And I remember saying to myself, I have to start over.
Mm.
So I thought to myself, what do kindergartners do? Well, kindergartners get a calendar and gold stars. So I literally went to the store, got a calendar and gold stars. By the way, I still have that calendar. And for the next 30 days, I gave myself a gold star anytime I did anything positive, anything. And I'm talking about anything. I'm talking about drinking but not getting drunk or getting angry and not breaking anything. That's the
Mm-hmm.
level of awareness I was at.
Okay.
And after 30 days, I had a calendar with gold stars. And that allowed me to have hope that I
Mm.
did have the power to change my life. That was the seed that was another seed of my destiny fulfilling itself, right? And that was the moment that was the changing point where I started looking at myself a little differently. Now, I still didn't know it was fear that would come a little bit later, but that was the beginning of my understanding that I could change my life.
Uh, Very powerful. Very, very, very powerful, Rhonda. And I do appreciate you sharing that because I know that there are listeners of this podcast who, may not have had the exact experiences, but they've had some devastating
Absolutely.
situations to happen in their lives. So I want to just ask you this, because I always don't know who is exactly listening to this podcast. I know what the podcast is all about, and I've gotten responses from people who've said that, they've been encouraged, inspired just
Mhm.
by listening. So I'm I want you to kind of share some encouraging, maybe inspiring, and hopefully transforming words to somebody who may be dealing with their struggles, their fears, or situations that they somehow find themselves in and don't know, exactly how to get out of them.
Yeah.
Or witness something that seemed to be devastating,
Yeah.
and you're the perfect person for me to ask this question out because listen to your testimony and what you've endured, I think will actually give somebody some reason to listen. So would you share that?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that I want to say, if you're moving through a difficult time, and so many people are right now, it's a very difficult time in our country and our world right now. And people who even have a lot of resilience are having a difficult time.
Hmm.
And so, if that is you, the first thing I want to say is be gentle with yourself. We're so tough on ourselves. We think we should be more resilient at times, that sometimes it's just a gentleness that we need with ourselves, just a kindness that we need with ourselves.
Hmm.
So, when we're going through a difficult time, don't expect yourself to be heroic. Don't expect yourself to, persevere in the sense of like, I can accomplish anything. You know what? You might just need to care for yourself lovingly.
Hmm.
The next thing that I want to say is there's probably some forgiveness work to do. I could not get on with my life, not only until I forgave my father. By the way, that was the easiest person to forgive.
Hmm.
Forgiving my father, it was clear he was the perpetrator. It was the clear, he's the one with the gun. So
Hmm.
forgiving him was clearly, needed and necessary. And he was the easiest.
Hmm.
The second easiest person, the middle person, was actually my mother, that I had to take her off the pedestal of victimization and actually see her as a woman. Somebody who actually was married to my father, who stayed with him during difficult times in the sense of he tried to strangle me when I was 12 and she stayed with him and she didn't kick him out of the house, et cetera. So forgiveness of my mother was also, that was the next challenging one. And
Hmm.
then the most difficult was challenging, forgiving myself,
Okay.
forgiving myself for not saving them. Now, again, I don't think that I could have saved them now as adult, of course, but
Hmm.
that feeling of guilt. So a lot of times when we're going through a difficult place, we're beating ourselves up, thinking we should have done something. We should have known better. We should have made
Okay.
a better decision. If we only would have done this, and we move into regret.
Well
Well,
said.
regret is a killer. Regret is something that will steal our life force.
Mm.
Regret is living in the past. So
Okay.
when you move into that gentleness and when you're willing to see yourself as innocent and when you're willing to forgive yourself for whatever you think you need forgiveness for that decision that you wish you didn't make, then you can leave that decision in the past because
Okay.
that decision isn't happening right now. That decision happened a week ago, a year ago, 10 years ago. That decision isn't here in the present moment unless you bring it into the present moment.
Mm.
So fear will always bring the past into the present moment in order to control you, to keep you safe, to keep you stuck. So fear is happy when you're in regret. Fear is happy when you're stuck. Fear doesn't care that you're happy. Fear doesn't care that you fulfill your destiny. So you get to decide, do I want fear to choose regret for me? I'm buying into that regret. And by the way, if you're having regret, it means you have a big, giant heart. It means you have a
Hmm.
big, giant heart. And
Hmm.
thank the Lord that you have a big, giant heart. But again, that regret is not a burden you need to carry anymore. I mean, I carried my parents around for 20 years. And
Hmm.
I remember when I forgave them, I'll never forget this. I'll never, never forget this. When I forgave my father, my mother, and myself, I went and did this big forgiveness ceremony
Mm.
by a lake, and I burnt some papers, and I thanked them, and I wrote down what they gave me, and I wrote down all the things I missed because they died, and all the pain I went through. I wrote it all down. I was there for hours.
Hmm.
And I burnt it all and then I buried it. And when I turned, I remember this so vividly. I was sitting, on the ground, burning and tearing and burying. And when I stood up and turned around and started walking towards my car, I remember so distinctly the feeling that this is the first time in my entire life that I was walking on my own 2 feet, that my parents were no, I was no longer carrying my parents with me, that I was breathing the air for the first time as myself. I was stepping for the first time as myself. I was no longer dragging them with me. And I can't tell you how freeing that was. And I didn't know that was going to happen, right? I didn't
Hmm.
know that was going to happen. But when we let go of that regret, when we let go and forgive ourselves, and I know somebody is listening right now going, I don't deserve forgiveness. I
Hmm.
get it. I thought that too.
Hmm.
But every person deserves forgiveness because bottom line is you did nothing wrong. You
Okay.
just you just think you did something wrong because
Uh,
maybe somebody told you it was wrong, or maybe the result you've had isn't what you want. So then you say you're wrong. But
Okay.
if you're willing to just give yourself a break, give
Hmm.
yourself a break and love yourself and forgive yourself
Okay.
and let the past be in the past and get yourself in the present moment, life changes and you can breathe again.
Okay.
You can breathe again.
Well said. Well said. I hear you very well. Listeners, we're getting some good information from Rhonda. So don't go into place, please, because I want to ask Rhonda to share with you uh, where you can learn more about her. If she has a book, books that you can get, a website, whatever it is. So Rhonda, would you do that at this time?
Absolutely. So you can find me at fearlessliving.org, fearlessliving.org. And if you go under books, you can actually get a free chapter of all four of my books. So I have four books. Fearless Living is the one that talks all about fear, and it actually talks about my forgiveness work. It talks about how I moved forward. It gives you step by step how I went from living in pain and regret to being who I am today. So that takes you through that journey. Change Your Life in 30 Days gives you a tool a day. And again, you can get a free chapter of that. So those are free chapters that you can get if you're not ready,
Hmm.
you want to test it out. And I want to gift a free course, and that is at fearlessliving.org, fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK, fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK. And this exercise, this tool is my clients and students' very favorite one. It's called Stretch, Risk, or Die. And it cures procrastination. It cures that feeling like, why can't I make my dreams happen? I'm stuck. Why am I not moving forward? I know I want to. What's my problem? It's going to give you, it's literally a tool that's going to take you through the whole process. Now, it's three 15-minute videos. That's it. You can do it today. You can do it this
Hmm.
hour, three 15-minute videos.
Okay.
Got a workbook, it's got worksheets, it's got examples. So whether you want to get healthier or whether you want to make more money or you want to open a business or you want to find love or be more in love, there is templates there for you. So,
Okay.
and also at the third video, the third 15-minute video, I go through the wheel of fear. So you can actually see the wheel of fear in motion. So go to fearlessliving.org/RISK and put your name and email in, and you'll get access to the platform and access to that course.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Listeners, please take that to heart. A couple more questions, Rhonda, and we will bring this to a close. It's hard to stop 30 minutes with you. You're so awesome.
Thank you.
So I have to ask just a few more questions. And that is, what if you're living fearlessly? You are, but your boss or your spouse, you
Mhm.
know, is living fearfully, you know. How do you deal with that situation?
Well, you're bringing up something that is so critical because many people do not choose to grow and to change and to shift and live their dreams
Hmm.
because of their spouse, their family, their coworkers.
Okay.
They're so afraid that they'll be left behind. They're so afraid. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, "Oh, I might get divorced." You don't have to get divorced. No, that's not what doesn't have to happen. I might have to shift my job. No, you don't have to shift your job if you don't want to. Oh,
Hmm.
my family's going to hate me. No, no, that's not how that happens. But that fear of changing, that fear of being different, that fear of not fitting in exactly like you have been
Hmm.
causes people to stop their own growth and transformation, they literally stop their own dreams.
Okay.
So one of the things that I do in Fearless Living, and you'll find out in Stretch, Risk, and Die, is how do you how do you support those people and also be true to yourself, right? But one of the things that I really support you with is when you understand your fear, when you understand how your fear works, then you understand other people's fears. So then when you are understand, oh, my core fear is, loser. I'm afraid to be a loser, or the greatest fear is I'm afraid to be selfish. When you're looking out at those friends and family, when you're looking at those coworkers, when you're looking at your partner, you're going to be able to see their fear too. And so
Okay.
you're going to be able to see them differently. you're going to be able to understand what their needs are, and you're going to be able to see your own needs. So you're going to be able to have very different conversations. And are those going to be scary in the beginning? Yeah, they are.
Hmm.
And bottom line is that's what I do is I help you understand who are the fear junkies in your life, who are the fear busters in your life, and then how to work with each one. How do you connect with them? What do you say to them? So I have that all in chapters 4 and 5 of my book, Fearless Living.
Okay. What does living fearlessly mean to you?
Well, it's not about jumping out of a plane, that's for sure.
Okay.
It's
I
about
wanted to make sure,
Yeah, no, it's not about that. It's not about
Okay.
that physical fears, right? But
Okay.
the
All
emotional
right.
fears
Okay.
are much more prevalent. No, it's not about jumping out of a plane. It's about jumping into
Okay.
life, jumping
Okay.
into life and fully engaged.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, so now my last question to you is, because this is interesting. I'm very concerned and very interested in knowing this about you. How did you become a life coach? Is that just something that you uh, came about at some point in your life? Did it happen that you wanted to share uh, and tell people how to get through certain situations, like you've already shared with us about your parents? Or
Well,
what
well,
is it?
that's such a great question. So, there was no such thing as coaching when I became a coach. I've been coaching for 30 years.
Oh, okay.
So I owned my own little tiny PR agency at the time.
Hmm.
I worked with solo entrepreneurs, and one of my solo entrepreneurs was one of the very first life coaches. And he would tell me all the time, "You're going to be a better coach than me." And I'd look at him and say, "You're crazy because did you forget about the drunk, the DUI and the suicide attempts and the alcoholism?
Hmm.
Did you forget about
Hmm.
that?"
Hmm.
Because back then I absolutely believed that I was my past. I,
Okay.
I was my past. I can't. Who would want to listen to me? Who would want to talk to me? What are you crazy?
Hmm.
No, I absolutely did not think that I was worthy of doing the work that he was doing or being a coach at all.
Hmm.
And I was one day, so he would always say that to me, "You're going to be a better coach than me." I would be like, "You're crazy." So one day I'm working with him in his office. I'm sitting on the couch. He's at the board. We're brainstorming a new program for him. And we're just brainstorming and talking. And all of a sudden, okay, this is woo woo, James. This is woo woo. I'm going to talk woo woo for a minute. Going to go to the woo woo. All of a sudden, in the corner of the room, the sky opens up, the ceiling opens up, a cloud comes out, and on the cloud is a book, and it goes like this, shuts, goes back on the cloud and back in the ceiling.
Hmm.
Now, I I don't think that's for me because it can't be for me. So I turn around because I think somebody walked in. Like I literally did not think it was for me. There's no way that was for me. So I turn around, there's nobody there. And then I look over at Paul, my client, and he's still talking away. He doesn't know what happened. And so I think to myself, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what just happened?" Thank God. I was actually in ministerial school at the time. And so I ran to my minister, who was my mentor, the next day, and I said, "Oh my God, this thing happened. The cloud came out, the book came out, the blah, 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 blah." And the book, when it went blah, 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 answered every question that I'd ever had, told me everything that I needed to know, and said to me, "Now you must go and teach this."
Hmm.
So
Sounds.
I tell my minister the story, tell her what it told me, and I say, she goes, "Oh, you got the call." And I go, "I got the call." She goes, "Yeah, when you get the call, you're ready." And I go, "No, no, no. I have to go get my master's. I have to go get my PhD. I have to write a book. So it's going to be like 7 to 10 years."
Hmm.
She's like, "No, Rhonda, if you got the call, you're ready right now." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I have 3 classes left in my bachelor. I got to go finish those. And I got to go get a master's and I got to go get a PhD. And then I'll write a book and then I'll be ready. It'll be 7 to 10 years." And she just kept saying to me, "You're ready because you got the call."
Hmm.
Took me many months to embrace that. Like I had this internal fight within myself, but there was no denial that I heard that download and that I knew the answers. And there was no denying that I was directed to start sharing this with others. I just really didn't believe that I had the right or that I had the worth or that I had the value or that I could do that.
Hmm.
So it was only after talking to my minister, and it was like about 6 months later, I think, that I was wrestling with this wrestling because again, my client who was a coach kept saying to me, "You're going to be a better coach than me." And my minister is sitting there going, "You're ready. You got the call." And I was the one that was like, "What are you crazy? Yeah, I can't do this." Well, I was selling. So Paul had a class and I was talking to friends and going, you should go take Paul's class. You should go take Paul's class. You should go take Paul's class. And one of my friends, Lisa, said to me, well, why don't you coach me? Now, she didn't even know about the cloud, right? She didn't know about the cloud. She just goes, hey, why don't you coach me? And I'm like, what? No, no, you got to go to Paul's class. She goes, no, I want you to coach me. And I'm like, what? No, I mean, I was literally like, you're crazy. No, go to,
Mhm.
she goes, no, I want you to coach me.
Mm.
And
Wow.
knew that was like a little nudge from God, right?
Okay.
And so I finally surrendered and said yes. And so for the first like 6, 8 months of coaching, I would have a session with her and then run back to Paul and say, she said this, I said this, she said, what do I do? Right. And I would do that every week for months. And finally, about like, I don't remember, month 7, 8, I started realizing that I actually did know what to do.
Okay. Well
And
said.
that was
Mhm.
the beginning of my journey.
Okay. I hear you. You've been exciting and been amazing. And I want to thank you for sharing today. And I'm trusting that there will be listeners who will, if they're going through it in fear, after hearing you, the only thing they should fear is that snake. So I think
That's
we'll be
right.
okay.
That's right. Just get to fearless living forward
Okay.
slash risk.
All right.
And there's
Uh,
nothing wrong with you. It's just fear.
I got you. And there you are, Rhonda Britten sharing with us today. And until next time, peace and blessings be with each of you.